I'm just like sitting on a cushion from the couch. That can be kind of nice in some situations. Hey, Mom. Hey, Mom. You should grab my yoga blocks and use them like by your mat. Have them by your mat.
These?
Yeah. All right, we're gonna get going as soon as everyone's ready. So we'll start just in a seat. So if you can just find a seat on your mat, sit cross-legged or however you are comfortable. And it can be really nice to take something underneath your hips. So I've just used a pillow from the couch. You could also use a blanket or whatever you have. And what it does is it just provides a little bit of a forward tilt of your pelvis. And then you can start to just allow your knees to drop down in front of you. And maybe allow your eyes to close. We'll just take a few rolls through the shoulders. So as you take a breath in, roll your shoulders forward and up to your ears. And then exhale and drop your shoulders down your back so that they sort of settle onto your back. We'll do that a few more times, rolling your shoulders forward and up to your ears, and then exhaling and letting them drop down. One more time like that. And then allow you can adjust your body as you need, so you're not really stuck here or stagnant. You can adjust your body, your hair, your clothes, anything you need as you need. I'm puppy sitting right now, so I'm gonna have this little guy around my mat. And the longer you sit here, you start to feel like your hips are becoming really heavy into the ground below you. And invite a little bit more length through your spine. So just imagine you can kind of sit up just a few centimeters taller. So just reaching the crown of your head a few centimeters higher. And just notice what that does to the quality of your breath. There's like more space in your torso to fill up with air. And then start to see if you can allow your breath to be smoother and deeper. And just generally fuller. Extending the lengths of your inhales and of course the exhales. Maybe these are the biggest breaths you've taken all day, and just starting to enjoy them. We'll be here for about another 3 to 5 more breaths. Good. From here, just allow your chin to drop down towards your chest And take an exhale as you move your chin over top of your right shoulder. Drop your left shoulder down. So your left shoulder now becomes really heavy. And then you can even walk your left fingertips on the ground away from your left hip. So now you're kind of feeling this gentle opening, this stretch all the way down the left arm, even into the left fingertips. Breathing here. And let's move to the opposite side now, dropping the chin down to the chest and over top of the left shoulder. Right shoulder drops down, becomes a little bit heavy. And the same thing, you can walk those fingertips away from your hip. And continuing to breathe here. Good. Coming back through center, stacking your head over top of your shoulders. We'll take a little twist here before moving on. So bring your right hand, set your right hand behind your low back. Bring your left hand to the right thigh. Take a big breath in to lengthen through your spine. And then exhale, turn your body, finding a gentle twist. So you're allowing this twist to be guided by your core rather than your gaze. So I'm not gazing all the way over my right shoulder. My gaze is quite neutral. And yeah, the twist is guided by my core. Inhale, come back through center, switch sides. Left hand behind low back, right hand, left thigh. Take a big breath in, lengthen, exhale and twist. So always moving like this, inhaling, finding length, exhaling, deepening the twist a little bit. Inhale for length, exhale to deepen. Good. And just come back through center, and if you're sitting on a pillow or anything, move that off to the side. And come onto your hands and your knees. So you're setting yourself up in a neutral tabletop position. We'll start to move through some cat and cow motions. So as you inhale, allow your belly to drop down. As your gaze lifts up, you feel this broadness across your shoulder blades. And then as you exhale, push your hands into the ground and round through your upper back, gazing towards your belly button. Again, inhale, belly drops, gaze lifts. Exhale, rounding through the upper back, feeling that stretch across the rhomboids. Allowing the crown of your head to drop down. And just move like this with your own breath. Inhaling and exhaling. Good, and you're really starting to find this connection already between your breath and your body here. So allowing your movements to be guided by your breath rather than your thinking brain a little bit more. It's really tough to do. Nice, guys. Good. And then let's take a child's pose. So bring your big toes together to touch. Widen your knees to the edges of your mat. And then sink your hips down to your heels and bow your heart down. So this is Balasana, child's pose. It's a pretty neutral position in yoga, so we'll come back to it fairly frequently. And then allow your forehead to rest down onto something. So if your forehead can't rest down on the ground, take your two fists, stack them, and just let your forehead rest on the top of your stacked fists. And then it can feel really nice to actually roll your forehead from left to right. Kind of relieves some pressure. Making your hips really heavy. Good. And then take an inhalation, come up to a tabletop position. Tuck your toes, send your hips up and back down to a downward facing dog. So this is our first downward facing dog. Let's pedal the knees a little bit left and right so the hips start to sway. And we're just kind of like peeling open the back line of our bodies here. Hips are swaying. We're still breathing in and out. And then once you kind of feel like you've kind of carved out this position, kind of feeling like a little bit more open, start to find just a little bit of stillness. Kind of settling in stillness, we'll take a few breaths, 3 deep breaths right here in a downward facing dog. And just take a peek at your palms, make sure your fingers are spread really wide. And you're really pressing down through the entire length of your thumb and the entire length of your pinky finger. Good, and then inhale, drop your knees to the ground and open your heart up like we were doing in those cow positions, so the belly's dropping. And then exhale, sink your hips back to a child's pose. We'll move through those 3 positions with our breath. So it'll guide us through a few rounds and then we'll move a little bit more independently. So take an inhale, come up to a tabletop, hands and knees. Exhale, downward facing dog. Good, right away with your breath, inhale, tabletop. Exhale, child's pose. Right away, inhale, tabletop. Exhale, downward facing dog. So we're moving like this. I'm going to let you go to allow your breath to start to guide your movements. You can always gaze at me if you get lost in any way. Good. Nice work. Let's do this 2 more times through. And then when you're all done, we'll meet in a downward facing dog. So take your time, there's no rush. When you're done your second round, just meet in a downward facing dog. Hips up in the air, hands planted. And then we'll start to walk our palms back towards our toes at the back of our mat. You'll have to bend your knees eventually. And then just drape your belly over top of your thighs and allow the crown of your head to drop down. So bend your knees as much as you need here so that your belly actually makes contact with your thighs. And then allow your head to be really heavy, and you can give your head a shake, say yes and no. And then maybe you grab a hold of opposite elbow and allow some traction through your spine. And then we're going to lift up halfway. So coming into a half lift, bring your hands to your shins or your thighs as you reach the crown of your head forward, sit bones reach back. Exhale, fold forward. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhaling, coming up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, fold. 1 more time. Exhale, good. Fingertips plant and walk yourself forward to a plank. We're going to hold our plank for 3 breaths, gazing about a foot or 2 in front of your fingertips. And you can take your plank from your toes or your knees, obviously, and just plugging your shoulders onto your back, feeling your belly button draw up towards your spine. Back of the neck is really long. And then from here, send your hips up and back, downward facing dog. Good. We're going to lift the right heel up to the ceiling with an inhale. And then exhale, bend through your right knee. Plant your right foot between your palms at the top of your mat. Stay lifted high here. So this is where your blocks might come in handy. Maybe you bring your blocks underneath your hands to bring the floor up to you. If you don't have blocks, maybe coming onto your fingertips. Really rolling onto the ball of the left foot. Left leg is really strong and straight. We're just hanging out here. If you'd like to go on, you can start to float your hands away from the ground. So maybe you're just floating your hands, maybe you're bringing them together in front of your heart, or airplaning them out to either side. And just reaching the crown of your head forward as you reach the left heel back as far as you can. Nice. One more breath in here. And then exhale, plant your palms and drop the back knee. Untuck the back toes and lift up into a low lunge. So now you're reaching your hands up toward the ceiling. Good. And let's actually bring our hands down to our hips and start to draw the right hip back as you bring the left hip forward just a little bit. So we're squaring the hips off to the front of our yoga mat. Good. Start to feel some length coming in through your low back. And then take a peek, actually gaze down at your belly button and notice how that turns on your core. Keep that connection, gaze back up, maybe sink a little bit deeper. And then reach your fingertips up toward the ceiling. So if we're here and we're kind of feeling like our shoulders are bunching up into our ears, what you can do is just cactus the elbows out to either side. Feel some broadness across the chest. Good. One more breath here. And then exhale, we're gonna plant our palms, both of our palms to the inside of the right foot. Heel toe the right foot out a little bit wider. So turning the toes out about 30 to 45 degrees. And again, you can come onto your blocks with your hands just to create a little bit more space in your body. We're going to stir some circles in the hips. So first, back your hips out a couple inches, and then just start to stir some circles through your hips. We'll move about 3 times in one direction, and then we're going to switch directions. And these circles that you're stirring can be as slow or as fast as you like, but make them really big. Okay. And then once you've stirred those circles, come into a neutral spine and lift your heart away from your hips. So lift your heart away from your hips, become really long through the spine. And then choose to stay right here if this is already enough in this right hip. Or maybe you're choosing to bend through the elbows and actually come down onto your elbows. So for this variation, I want you to try to keep your whole right foot firmly planted on the ground. So there's some variations where we might roll onto the pinky toe edge. Instead, just keep that big toe planted. Mochi, come here. Good, nicely done. Good, Daniel. All right, we're going to start to peel ourselves away from the ground and walk your right foot in so now your palms are framing your front foot. Tuck your back toes, lift your back knee up, step back to a downward facing dog. And again, you can kind of pedal through the hips a little bit, bend one knee, bend the other. And if downward facing dog is ever feeling a little bit too much, you can always drop down and take a child's pose. Okay, so that's always available to you. All right, just moving into the opposite side, lift your left heel up to the ceiling. Exhale, bend through the left knee, plant the left foot between the palms, and stay lifted high off of that back knee. So coming into this sort of like long runner's lunge here. And then becoming really long through the body again, creating as much space as you can from the crown of the head all the way back to the right heel, really pressing up through that right thigh. Good, and then press down so firmly through the center of the left foot that the hands begin to float away from the mat a little bit. Maybe airplaning them out to either side. If you'd like an extra challenge, maybe you're reaching your fingertips forward in the same direction as your head. And just breathing here. Your belly is kind of just barely kissing the top of your left thigh. Good. One more breath here. And then plant your palms, drop your back knee, untuck your back toes, and find that low lunge again. So here, maybe airplane or cactusing your elbows out. Good. So we're being aware not to flare the ribs open and compress the space in our low back. Keeping the core slightly engaged so that the spine remains really long. Good. One more breath in here. Exhale, all the air comes out. Plant both of your palms to the inside of your left foot. Heel toe that left foot a little bit wider. We'll start to stir those circles again through the hips. And again, just 2 or 3 rounds in both directions, in each direction. Any areas that feel tight or that need a little bit more attention, give it that. So maybe spending a little extra breath in those areas that are feeling tight. Okay, and then finding stillness, lifting your heart up, dropping your shoulders down, choosing to stay, or choosing to go on by hinging from your hips and maybe coming down onto your elbows. Maybe you're using your Tupperware here to kind of provide a platform for your forearms. And then try to keep the inside of the left knee glued to the left shoulder. And if you've ever gone too far, if you've ever come into a position and you're like, oh my God, I'm not breathing anymore, you've actually gone too far. So back up a little bit and reestablish your breath, your easy breath. Okay, start to come up, press into your palms if you've lowered down. And frame your front foot with your palms. Tuck the back toes, lift the back knee. This time, step up to the top of your mat. So maybe you can do it in one step, maybe 2 or 3, and fold forward. So maybe your forward fold is looking a little bit more like this, belly on thighs and quite a generous bend through the knees. And that's totally fine. But when we have this, then we're starting to work on not losing this connection between the core and the thighs, but starting to lift the hips up and drop the crown of the head down. Okay, take an inhale, lift up halfway. Ardha Uttanasana again. So this is like, we're just making the spine parallel with the ground. Exhale, fold. 2 more times like that. Inhale. And exhale. Last one. Exhale. We're going to come all the way up to stand, leading with our hearts. So allow the heart to rise and press into your feet, standing all the way up. Good. I'm going to adjust this camera a little bit. Okay, so now we're standing on our mats, and let's just take a moment here in mountain pose. So we're standing here, and this is in yoga called mountain pose. So maybe allow your eyes to close if you're comfortable doing that, and start to feel into the way that your body has stacked. Notice where in your feet the weight of your body has landed. Is it more in your toes or your heels? And can you evenly distribute the weight of your body across your feet? And pick up all 10 toes and really spread them out wide, and then set them all back down at the same time. Notice if your shoulders have landed over top of your hips. And really allow your shoulder blades to nestle on your back. So starting to feel this broadness across the heart. Maybe this is like the tallest you've stood all week. The most space you've taken up all week just from standing. And then maybe you can grow just a little bit taller. Just like we did when we were sitting, maybe you can reach the crown of your head up 1 centimeter or 2. Good. And then let's move through some balancing poses from here. So you can open the eyes now if they're closed, and find one point to rest your gaze on. So this is a point maybe on the walls or the couch in front of you, or whatever is in front of you that's not moving. And transfer the weight of your body into your left foot, and then free the right foot away from the ground, and actually interlace your fingers somewhere along this right leg. So maybe in front of the shin or underneath the thigh. And roll out through the ankle a few times. In one direction and then the other. Good, and still pressing down a lot through the left foot. So we're still really tall here. And then cross the right ankle over top of the left thigh. And peel the toes of the right foot back toward the right knee. So we're protecting this knee joint. We're engaging some of these muscles. And then from there, just sit down into like an imaginary chair behind you. Okay, and if you come out and if you lose your balance, like it's fine. You're still a good person. Lift your heart up a little bit more and sit down just a little bit deeper. So sturdy, so steady. Good. All right, come up and out. So as you come up, try not to touch the right foot to the ground. Try not to touch the right foot to the ground. Instead, just lift that knee really high, really, really high. Good. And let's come into tree pose. So we're going to come to place this right foot somewhere along this left leg. So option 1 is to grab a hold of the ankle and actually bring it up into the inner thigh. Option 1. Option 2, just resting the foot on the calf. And then option 3 would be to just let the toes actually come down to the mat And just rest the heel on the inner ankle. So, and then sometimes we have this hand position, right? In yoga, you'll often see this. But really, what it does is it provides like this tactile connection of engaging through your center, your core. So if you can press the right palm into the left palm and press the left palm into the right palm, you'll find this kind of like engaging through the midline of your body. And then from here, just come out, softly place the right foot down beside the left. And you can wiggle through the hips a little bit, do what you need to do to let that go. And let's take a collective breath in. So breathe in, fill your lungs, and sigh, let it go. And do that again. And exhale. Moving into the opposite side. Moving your weight onto your right foot and coming in, taking those rolls through the ankle again. So hugging that knee into your chest as high as it'll go. So maybe you're kind of more hip height. And then rolling out through the ankle. And then crossing this left foot over top of the right thigh. And just starting to sit down. So here you can kind of imagine your right sit bone or your right bum cheek reaching to the corner of the back corner of the room on the right side and the left doing the opposite. And everyone, again, try to stack your shoulders over your hips a little more. And just see if you can sit down a little deeper. Okay, and from here, press into your right foot, lift all the way up. Try to lift that knee as high as it'll go for a second. Okay, and then come into tree pose, preferably the same variation you took on the first side. You'll take on this side too. And then here, if you're feeling sturdy, feel like you're not wiggling or wobbling too much, maybe you reach your hands up overhead. All right, let's come out, placing the left foot down beside the right and coming into mountain pose again. See if you can land in mountain pose maybe a little bit quicker than you did the first time. So just finding that place where your feet are right underneath your hips. And again, let's take a big breath in together as a crew. And sigh, let it out. Good. From here, reach your fingertips up toward the ceiling. And then exhale, bend through your knees, hinge at your hips, fold forward. Take an inhalation, lengthen out halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, fold, plant your palms, step back to a plank. You can take your plank from your toes or your knees. Holding it for 3 breaths. And then at the end of your 3rd breath, move your shoulders forward about 1 inch, and then lower all the way down to your belly. From this position, place the tops of your feet onto your mat. I'm going to adjust my camera here so you can still see. Press the tops of your feet into your mat. Press your pelvis into your mat. And then with your hands kind of underneath your shoulders, just reach your heart forward, coming into a baby cobra bhujangasana. Exhale, lower down. Do that a few more times. Inhaling, reaching forward. Exhaling and lowering. And for the last round, see if you can actually float your palms away from your mat as you lift up. So you're not using your palms to press in. Instead, you're using the muscles that surround your spine. Nice. Yes, Derek. Good. Let's do that one more time just for fun. Cool. And then press into your palms, press into either your toes or your knees, and shoot up to a plank. From your plank, send your hips up and back, downward facing dog. Good. From your downward facing dog, take a breath in, lift your right heel high. Exhale, bend through the right knee, place the right foot between the palms. Stay lifted high and then swivel the left heel down so that the pinky toe edge of the left foot is parallel with the short edge of your mat. And then windmill your arms up. We're coming into a warrior two. Okay, so none of my cameras are really set up well for this, but let's try. Okay, so coming into a warrior two. I'm going to adjust this so you can see my arms. Good, and then check in to make sure that your right heel is intersecting with the arch of your back foot. Finding close to a 90-degree bend through that front knee, and maybe it's closer to a 45. That's okay. And the tendency here is to kind of reach forward through the shoulders. Instead, really focus on stacking your shoulders over your hips. Good. Taking one more breath here. And then bring your hands down to your hips and straighten through your front knee. Turn all 10 toes to face the long end of your mat. So I'm going to turn around. And then open up into like this 5-pointed position. Good. And then bring your hands to your hips and bend through your knees a little bit. Start to send your bum back as you reach your heart forward. And then come to place your hands underneath your face. So we're in this kind of like wide leg, half lift type of position. And stay here, bend your knees as much as you need to in order to feel length through your spine. There's common themes in yoga. We will always lengthen through the spine. We always make sure the breath is flowing. And then place the left palm underneath your face and take an inhalation as you reach your right fingertips around and up toward the ceiling, kind of stacking the shoulders as much as you can. The hips are going to want to follow this movement. So can you plug the left hip back, lift it up and press it back? Gazing down toward the ground and switching sides. Now the right hand takes the place of the left. On an inhalation, sweeping the left fingertips around and up. Stacking the shoulders if you can. Tipping the heart up. Keeping the hips squared and neutral. Gazing down, coming and switching sides one more time. An inhalation sweeps your fingertips around and up, kind of drawing this half circle. Gaze down and switch once more. Again, coming back to that idea of lengthening with an inhalation and twisting, finding some integration, finding a little bit of depth with your exhalation. Gazing down, planting both of your palms, and let's fold forward. So folding forward, bend your knees as much as you need to, of course, and just allow the crown of your head to drop down a little bit. And maybe it's kind of touching the ground or maybe not, and you're bending your knees accordingly. So you can almost come into as if you were about to lift up into a tripod headstand. Your hands are behind your head, more in line with your feet. Lift up halfway with an inhalation. Exhale, bring your hands to your hips, and then inhale, come all the way up to stand. Good. So we're going to turn the left toes to face the side of your mat. So we're taking warrior two on the opposite side. And then bend into the left knee when you're ready and expand out through the arms. Check behind you. A good warrior always checks behind them. And then rest your gaze on your left index finger. Good. Obviously, sensation is going to start to build through this left leg, this left hip. And we're just breathing through it, knowing that it's just sensation and our bodies want to work for us. So let them work for you. Taking one more breath here. Hands to hips. Straighten through that left knee. And step up to the top of your mat. Landing in mountain pose again. We're going to start to come back down to the ground from here. So we've kind of finished our standing positions. We're going to make our way down and start to close our practice off. So inhale, sweep your fingertips high. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, lift up halfway. Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, fold, plant your palms, step back to a plank. Again, hold your plank for 2 or 3 breaths. And then come forward an inch and lower all the way down to your belly, brushing your elbows along your rib cage as you lower. Coming into 3 rounds of that Bhujangasana, baby cobra. Inhale, reaching your heart forward, lifting up, using the muscles in your back to lift up. Exhale, drop down. 2 or 3 more times like that. And then when you're ready, when you're all done, pressing into your palms and your knees this time, lifting up through a tabletop, and then sinking your hips back to your heels. And bowing your heart down, coming into child's pose. And again, maybe rolling your head back and forth along your mat. And then take an inhalation, pick up your head and your heart just a couple inches away from the mat, and walk both of your palms toward the right side of your mat, kind of framing your right knee. And bow back down here. So we're kind of taking this side body stretch on the left side. And again, try not to let that left hip follow us over to the right. So keeping that left hip heavy. Take an inhalation, lifting up the head and the heart and walking both hands to the left. Bowing back down to the left side. Right hip is heavy. Let's come back through center and just align back in center for a few breaths. And see if you can start to really breathe into the back of your body. So oftentimes when we think about our lungs, we think about them on the front plane of our body, but remember that your lungs take up a lot of space in the back as well. So breathe into your lungs, expand to the back of your body. Expand the space between every rib on the back of your body. Okay, and start to walk your palms back towards your knees. You're going to come to sit up. Move your heels off to one side, hips off to the other. And come and bring your feet around and in front of your body. You can rest with your hands behind your low back for some balance, some stability. And then take your heels quite wide, a little bit wider than the width of your mat if you have one. And then just tip your knees from side to side. Tip your knees from side to side. See if you can actually feel the head of that femur bone moving in the hip socket, lubricating that hip socket. Good. And then extend your legs out, and we'll take Dandasana, or stick pose. Brett did this in like one of his workouts recently, where he like sat down on the ground and then like moved these kettlebells or these weights back and forth. So this is kind of what he was doing. Press your hips into the mat or into the ground, and kind of roll your inner thighs down. Can you roll your inner thighs down a little bit and press the ball of your toes out so that the pinky toe edge of your feet roll back towards your nose. Okay, and then you can place the hands beside your hips, and maybe it'll help you, but try not to press down through your hands. Just resting them there maybe. And drop your shoulders down and lift up through your heart, Josh. Lift up through your heart, the crown of your head. Good. And then bend into your right knee. Come out of that. And cross your right foot over top of your left thigh. So this is option 1. Option 2 would be to bend through this left leg and bring the left heel close to the hip. But if you get here and you're kind of like unsturdy in your hips, then come back to that straight leg position through the left leg. We'll take a twist. So bring the right hand to your behind your low back, and take an inhalation. Reach your left fingertips high to the sky. And then exhale, come into a twist. So hooking the left arm to the outside of your right knee, or hugging the right knee. Gazing back forward, unhook the elbow, extend both legs out long. You can windshield wiper through the feet a little bit. And then come into the opposite side. Bending through the left knee, crossing the left foot over the right thigh. Option 1, or option 2, you choose. And then coming into that twist, again on the opposite side. Good, so just try to take note of how much weight you're resting on that left hand. You know, try to really lift up and away from that left hand so that you could even float it away from the mat and you wouldn't collapse. Gazing back forward, unhooking, uncrossing. Take a few windshield wipers through your toes, and then make your way down to your back from here. Just laying down onto your back, give your knees a hug into your chest. And just give your low back a little massage. So rolling, kind of moving your knees in a circular motion together, so that they massage your low back. And do it in both directions. And then we'll take a twist from here. So bring the feet down to the mat. And press into your feet, your heels, so that you lift your hips a few inches away from the mat, and move your hips as far as they will go to the left, and set the hips back down. Bring your toes and your knees together to touch, and pick up your feet away from the mat and drop your knees together to the right. So we've sent our hips left and we've moved our knees right. And then open your arms out into a T position. And, oh, it feels so good. And then maybe move your gaze over your left palm. So the idea here is why we moved our hips to the left. We want to try to stack our hips. We want to try to really protect the low back as much as possible. So we're stacking our hips. And in an ideal world, our knees would be stacked perfectly and our hips would be stacked perfectly. It doesn't always work that way. So you can, if you choose, like place a pillow between your knees or place something underneath your knees so that you bring the floor up to you again. Then back through center, lift your gaze up. Lift your knees up through center. And move your hips to the right. Pick them up and move them as far as right as they will go. Set them back down. Let your knees fall up and over to the left. And then extending the arms out into a T. And maybe allowing your gaze to drift over that right palm. And the right shoulder might be touching the ground, but it might not be as well. And so that's kind of what you're working on. You're just slowly working with gravity, getting that right shoulder blade closer and closer to the ground. Bring your knees back through center. Your gaze back through center. Give your knees another hug into your chest. And then, one by one, slowly start to extend all of your limbs out into a corpse pose. So you're just laying on your back, completely flat. Extending your legs out long, extending your arms, letting your arms just rest on the side of your body. Maybe flipping your palms open toward the ceiling. And just allowing your whole body to relax. Every muscle in your body relaxing. Letting your toes just effortlessly fall out to either side. From your head to your toe, your whole body is so relaxed and heavy. And on your next exhalation, let go even more. And take rest. And I'll come and get you in a few minutes, but just enjoy a little bit of rest. start to come back to your breath. Deepening your breath and starting to invite a little bit of movement back into your body. Start by slowly rolling out through your ankles and your wrists. And just waking your body up in any way that feels really good and supportive. Maybe this morning you missed that classic good morning stretch, so maybe you choose to just reach your hands overhead and point your toes and just stretch your body really long. Feels so good. And then roll onto your right hand side in a fetal position. Hugging your knees into your chest, using your right arm as a pillow for your head. Take a few breaths here. And then as you're ready, make your way to a seat. All right, we're done. Thanks, everybody. Namaste. So, I'm gonna turn this camera off here.